Do you know that scene of the guy pacing around his bedroom with the recorder, arms length outstretched, trying not to spit all over the mic points, trying to talk about something? Like, it might be a manuscript, it might be a book, it might just be inner therapy or something. Well, right now I'm doing that. I'm pacing. I'm pacing around this kind of, it's not a very big space. Like, I'm avoiding pillows. I just avoided a wire. There's a pair of shoes that almost cost me my life. But I'm walking around, I'm pacing, and I'm talking to this microphone, and I keep on repeating it. I want to give you an intro, and I want to give you one that is sincere, and one that's pretty flawed. Not intentionally flawed, but allows for a little missteps to happen. A stutter here, a stammer there. So I'll tell you the intros I made up to this point. And then I'm going to tell you why I feel we're making this podcast. And more importantly, why this concept is interesting at all to either of us. So I first started recording. I said, welcome back to this podcast, like 40 times, easily. Just on and on and on. And that was it. A lot of stuttering, some like self-flagellation, definitely some like in the mirror, like get yourself together. And then I did another round, and this time it became like a Jerry Seinfeld bit. More sincere, but I was talking about intros for an intro. And I don't think there's any problem in that, but I wanted to say something to you, and I wanted to say something sincerely to you, and there was some rambling. This round I revisited it again. And before I started, I thought, what kind of thing do I want to record? How do I want to be sincere? And what would being sincere look like for me? Especially for the fact that somebody may or may not hear this. And I thought about doing this intro first. Prefacing the intro. Saying I know it's an intro. I know what it's like to walk out around a room self-consciously, talking out loud, basically to yourself, but also with this like little glimmer of a hope that someone's going to listen and pick it up. Then I thought about the second part that I want to talk about, which is why I relate to the Misaka concept at all. Why we're making this podcast. And I think it comes from a really old place in myself. Because I love my thoughts. Not narcissistically, I don't mean it like that. I mean that I wish I could hug them, and I wish that I could use them as companions. I wish I could lay down and imagine, and those things would materialize, and then I could be friends with them. And you think about imaginary friends, and all kids seem to have an imaginary friend. But imagine if every concept you had filtered into the world. That an outlet to the page, or an outlet to a canvas, or an outlet from a podium, those weren't the only channels for you to talk about your thoughts. Those weren't the only ways to kind of laterally make those things real. How cool would it be if you could think of your concepts genuinely as friends, if you could relate to them as yourself, and you could love them? And I think a lot of people do. And I think a lot of people want to. And I certainly know that since I was a kid, I always have. I don't want to sell this as if what I'm saying is right for anyone. Definitely not everyone. And I definitely don't want to sell this as if I think that my thoughts are exclusively something or better than something else. I think that where I'm coming from, and really similar for Aiden too, is a place of wanting to share a culture, an inner culture. And it's after all of this passion for this idea that we started thinking about the Misaka thing through conversation. And the Misaka thing became this really great representation of what I like about thinking. I like thinking because it's mutable. I like thinking because it's like clay. I like thinking because it becomes and unbecomes things. It's like a shadow. That I can somehow use my thinking to inform physical things. myself, other people's internal states, I think it's worth it. I really do. And I'm glad for anybody that would stick to listen through. And at this point, how interesting it is to be in this room and be saying this, I'd be really glad to listen to it as well. I'm glad for sure to talk about it. You make it to the end of passionate rants like that, or whatever the thing is, or you're thinking about it being passionate, or whether or not it sounded passionate, or whether or not it matters if it does. You get a little winded. And eventually you just say, do the thing. So, here's the second episode. The cool thing about the Misaka concept is that you're relating to forms, and they're not physical forms, really. I mean, I've not made a physical Misaka. I have metaphorically or something, but I've not made a physical Misaka. So I'm relating to ideas as I imagine them to be forms. And that reminds me of the same thing that we're talking about when imagining yourself.
When you say forms, you just sort of mean like an entity?
Yeah, like entity is good. I think that, yeah, I mean, it's probably like a being, right? Or a creature, or
okay, so
or another person.
We'll just call them hypothetical beings for the sake of relating it to people more.
Yeah, let's call them hypothetical beings. I like hypothetical beings.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're relating to a hypothetical being, and that's kind of easy to do because you relate to people, maybe, or maybe even if you don't, you talk to people, and the whole, whatever degree of empathy you have.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah. It's using empathy.
Yeah.
On yourself.
Yes. Okay. So that's a really good way to think about it. I think because it's a weird empathy tool. It's taking advantage of empathy in a particular way, and that my capacity to simulate experience through other people or to relate to other people gives rise to my ability to relate to the Misaka thing.
Because we are looking at them as other people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, in the same way that I'm listening to a podcast and I can relate and I can understand a conversation because that's an inherent thing that I've conditionally been able to understand. When you think about Misakas as these forms and stuff, as people or people talking or whatever, then it's kind of just that much easier of a step. Okay, here's a good example of it. Like, in a pretty real way, the difference between Joe Rogan and a guy having a conversation and you listening to it isn't really that much different than you thinking about a Misaka explaining a thing, or two Misakas talking, or simulating a conversation between two people. Like, yeah, the podcast has been recorded previously, and now I'm listening to my current listening of it, but there's not really many steps between that and imagining that it happened. I don't have a ton of proof. I mean, yeah, it was recorded, sure, but I don't have a lot of proof that conversation even happened. So in a pretty real way, everything is imaginative in that way, and so the Misaka thing's similar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because it's if you're thinking about it, like the first steps obviously are looking at past Misakas, right? Mm-hmm. So in a way, a past Misaka is a recorded podcast.
Yeah.
It is a recorded Misaka that already happened,
mm-hmm.
and your job in the beginning is to sort of listen to that conversation,
mm-hmm.
or to look back at that Misaka.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the same thing,
yeah.
because a podcast is history and past.
Right.
It gets a little trickier when you start to take the lessons and apply them to Misakas that are happening now or in the future. But yeah, for what it is as a recorded medium, that's, by listening to it, it's already in the past. It's the same thing as listening to, like doing research on your past Misakas, using that imagination to put yourself in the shoes of where you were at that time,
right.
to gain the lessons and use and sort of connect with what's happening as if it's happening now. Like I said earlier, when that conversation happens, it feels live to me,
right?
Because I can put myself in the shoes of X person.
Yeah,
yeah.
history reference makes me think about a quote, and I want to talk to you about. And it was, those that know history are doomed to repeat it. Like, so like the normal quote is, what is it? I guess that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, or something like that. But those that do know history are doomed to repeat it. Like, this, and it refers back to a conversation we had at one point when I was asking you why you found value in history, like not just academically, but like just as an idea. And you gave really solid reasoning for that I think would be cool for you to talk about. But first, I wanted to bring up that idea of those that view history are doomed to repeat it, and how there's a really important difference between like constantly reliving and punishing yourself for past things, and viewing past situations as Misakas and things to learn from. And I think that would be cool to talk about. Like how, like...
Oh, it's interesting that you went right to the negative. Like you kind of assumed the punishing of oneself. Wouldn't it equally be likely that there's praise for oneself?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I could have done something previously that would make me praise myself for sure. But
sure. I mean, I guess it is easier to find things to punish yourself for.
Yeah, I mean, the memory you're going to have when you go to the job interview is that you wore ketchup on your shirt.
You wore ketchup on your shirt,
like not as a tie, like not a condiment piece of, like, article of clothing.
Kids who play with sheets.
Relatable. But
I mean, you'll get stuck on, because again, it's the cliche statement saying you are your own harshest critic. Yeah,
and definitely never your best therapist.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of this is going back to that thing we said earlier of it's using it's internal empathy. It's separating yourself from yourself so you can be empathetic towards yourself.
Yes. Yeah. So not punishing yourself for your history, and also not looking at your history so much that ends up being the only inner script you're reading. If that's the only inner script you're reading, then like the stage directions are shit my pants at a birthday party and wear ketchup at my job interview.
Okay, so if all you think about is tactic and pattern 1 through 7, all you will ever know is tactic and pattern 1 through 7, and that's all you'll be able to use.
It's like mental hygiene.
Yeah, so your tool belt of these 7 tools is all you have. Yeah, I mean that just it's the importance of external input from other things that have found 8 through 10. Yeah,
but also using your internal input as your external input, like being able to view your history, and then instead of saying I'm just reliving a memory, I'm just pressing play on that video of me having that experience. Instead, I say remove and say that is a memory. That memory represents this thing. Here's the thing I may or may not have learned through that. Here's the thing I may or may not have processed through that. That's that Misaka. That's that concept. And then being able to say, cool, I'm not just passively reliving something and then conditioning myself more to relive things and to think a certain way. I'm specifically taking control of that, like to some extent. So that's kind of the whole difference to me between doomed to repeat history because you know history.
I get that. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you brought up a good thing of it's sort of Misaka is a framework that creates a value machine.
Yeah.
Where instead of just pushing play on the video, you're then running it through this structured machine where you know value is going to come out of the other side. And looking at it that way of like, what is that Misaka about? What was it trying to teach me? What was it struggling with? Seeing it that way, it gives you a framework to easily pluck the value rather than just saying like, here's this memory I have.
Exactly.
Where do I start? What do I do with it?
And it's really funny because I personally feel like that, at least in my history, that the way to optimize looking back at things so as to get value from them is like really simply just learning to ride that bike, just doing it continuously. It was frustrating to me for a long time to discover that I'm conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
and that just repeating a task will increase my chances of repeating that task.
Mm-hmm. It's like with the conversation we had a while ago where I told you about the man I met in Alaska,
Yeah.
who we were talking about 10,000 hours to master something,
Right.
and he pointed out that like you're always working on your 10,000. You're always practicing something,
Right.
If you're just sitting and being lazy,
Mm-hmm.
you're practicing the 10,000 hours of mastering being sitting and being
Right.
lazy.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what your time is spent doing, you're putting hours towards that 10,000 of mastering something.
Right.
So if you're being critical of yourself, you're practicing being critical of yourself, and you're just going to get better at it.
Yep.
And you're just going to do it more.
Again, that's a funny idea. Becoming really good at being an asshole to yourself.
Yeah, making yourself feel shitty.
Just being the best.
You
in
can,
your
you
head
can
heckler.
master that. Yeah, you can master making
Yeah.
yourself feel terrible.
Yeah.
So it's realizing that you're always you're always like working on some muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Is it good for you or bad for you? And it's looking at that, like, what am I doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Is this muscle that I'm working positive or negative to the long run of me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I sitting and watching TV? Am I criticizing myself? So it's framing your way and like always trying to in every moment do something that's exercising a muscle that's going to give you benefit.
Okay, actually,
I have a puppet story about that.
so I had this puppet that was supposed to represent the just human anatomy. I'm
Stop
kidding.
it.
Kidding.
Get it out.
I like the muscle topic as kind of a central topic for the episode. And I also like the idea of choosing a topic midway into the episode, or having to have a topic at all, and knowing we don't have to have one, so just choosing one in the middle of the episode kind of declares that. But like,
So do you have anything else to say about muscles? Is that why? Or you just like decide
There are
like,
different
muscles are good?
there are different types of muscles. The idea that training a muscle is a really good way to talk about conditional learning and just like behavioralism in general and stuff, and that those are two actually really, to me, important concepts when thinking about the Misaka thing, because in a pretty real way, every Misaka is just a way for you to build a muscle. I mean, now we're layering metaphors, but like,
I see that.
in the way that we talk about a Misaka, or the Misaka that is a concept, having a life cycle, so it's growing, and you have to train it, and you have to keep it alive, and you have to feed it an apple to give it energy. You know what I mean?
But also not overwork it, because it will then
exactly
have a negative effect.
And then not let it atrophy, and then don't let it the opposite of atrophy.
Exactly.
So I like that as kind of a main topic, because the idea essentially is, I might know that if I work at something continuously, I'll learn something, or I'll get better at something. But to me, that there's kind of this fine line that's being drawn between that and like, I'm trying to build muscles mentally.
Yeah,
like
they're conceptual muscles.
Yeah, the specific thing that I want to think about, I want to be better at thinking about that thing. So like, if I want to become better at recognizing like visual patterns, obviously I surprise my brain by looking at different types of visual patterns, and I disorient myself and whatever, and then I also repeat. But I don't know. I think there's a difference between that and how people normally look at building the muscle conceptually.
Yeah, the two biggest ones that I've used this on is when I'm thinking about something.
Yeah.
I will always take a step back and go, am I thinking about this positively or negatively?
Okay.
So I sort of think of like my positive and negative muscle.
Yeah.
And I always will try to be like, oh shit, I'm working my negative muscle right now.
Yeah.
Let me balance it out with working my positive.
Right.
So I'll sort of force myself to reframe things in a positive way.
Yeah.
And then the second way that I use it a lot is, am I taking responsibility right now, or am I blaming someone else?
That's good.
So am I looking for an internal reason of how to fix this problem, or am I blaming it on an external reason of why this problem exists? So I use that one as well, of just sort of like the responsibility for my feelings and my actions muscle, I guess. So it's anytime that I'm blaming or saying like, this doesn't make me feel good, or this is broken, or this doesn't work, am I blaming it on an external source? I see that as working that muscle, and it only makes it easier and stronger and more likely that I'm going to continue blaming it on something else because that muscle is now stronger than the alternate muscle. Right? It's also important to look at them as like they're both muscles, and just making sure, not getting rid of one, but making sure the positive one, the one that gives you more benefit, is stronger. So it's easier to lean on that one and let that one do the lifting rather than the one that's weaker.
Yeah.
Because you'll always, human nature is to do what's easiest, right? So you'll always lean on the muscle that's stronger because it's easier to lift that thing for you. So it's the positivity, negativity, those two muscles, and then a responsibility and blame, those two muscles.
This makes me think about something I like, which is I like really plain, the cliche level, like acknowledgments of your place and or wherever you are or whatever you're thinking. Like
whose place?
Ours.
Okay.
Okay. Like so
the proverbial you.
Yeah, the proverbial.
Okay.
Yeah. The whole idea of lifting a rock and that it takes less resistance, at least for me at times, to say that the rock is really heavy and like impossibly and unfair in an unfair amount heavy, and not that I can't lift the weight of the rock.
Well, and also there's multiple ways to lift a rock, right? If I pick up something heavy and I think my back is really strong and I lift with my back, that's not the right way to lift. You want to lift with your legs, right? So it's seeing that there's multiple ways to lift this rock. Which one gives me the most long-term benefit, right? I might be able to lift it up both ways, but which way to lift this rock is better for me?
So that's cool because it's the upfront, it's the awareness, and then it's action from awareness. So I say,
yes,
I'm training my ability to recognize that these are things, that I'm looking at things, and then I decide how I want to actually manipulate those things.
Yes.
Will you do something? Will you ask me a question? Just ask me any question.
Ask you any question?
Yeah, just any question you want.
One.
Wait, you're numbering them? Or?
What is your most recent regret?
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I'm going there. You gave me the blank slate.
I did give you, and I gave you the floor, and I guess you're just gonna mop my blood with it. But let's see. What do I regret? The other day, I had a cool opportunity to share a lot about myself and undo a lot of like little lies that I had told. Like I had the opportunity to unknot a lot of things that I had lied
pull
about.
the loose thread on the sweater.
Yeah, exactly. That had been built on saying really silly things. And I was in this cool situation that I was in a friend's room, and it was like, and this is a funny idea, but it was all the variables are there too for it to be safe. Like the person was non-judgmental and outspoken that they were non-judgmental, and caring like explicitly, and had shown that. And it was dark. It's kind of nice when you can't see the face you're talking to. About the things
it adds a level of anonymity to the situation.
It does. Yeah. It's kind of like the
physical internet.
Yeah, like
physical Twitter.
Or whenever the person with the blackout face and the distorted voice, I was there on
the witness protection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So just having witness protection people to talk to is kind of useful, or being one. So I was having a witness protection conversation, and all the variables were set up for me, to be honest. And I wasn't vomiting. It was, I mean, there was retching. Like I was little vomit at a time, saying the things that I wanted to say, and admitting things that I had lied to myself about and other people about. And a lot of them were biographical things. A lot of them are just facts about things I had and had not experienced. And I went really far into it. Like I said, just like a long line, like just I went on a big diatribe about at least like 50 items of my life that were unclear to other people intentionally because of what I said. and then going back on it and revising them and then telling them the truth. And I know that there's some use in just stopping. I know there was some use just being authentic and sharing, but I kind of wanted the quantity. Like I was so much in that space and that opportunity to say more, and I knew that I wanted to, and I kept on fighting it. And so there have been so many different times when I've had my authenticity Misaka be so present that not only would I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I'd be like fucking, it was like, I don't know, like attached to my hands. Like I had cloned hearts. So I had like hearts in my hands. Every time I shook a hand, my heart was smashed. Every time on the bottom of my shoes, like there was a point when I grew kind of the authenticity Misaka, and granted it was kind of deformed because, well, one, I was wearing hearts everywhere, and two, because I was being really authentic, but in a way that was painful.
Yeah, it's overworking the muscle.
Yeah. And so there was a time where I would really overwork the authenticity muscle, where I would like walk up to somebody and they'd be...
Should we just rename them muscle sakas?
Muscle sakas? Yeah, they're all really ripped. Women, little kids. Or however old Misaka is.
Really ripped women, little kids?
Yeah, ripped women, little kids.
Okay, yeah. Hearts on your hands and feet, mutated Misaka.
Ripped little women.
I'm just trying to get you back on track.
Okay. Like someone would be at a water fountain, or like getting coffee, and I'd walk up to them, and I'd say, "Hey, how's it going?" And they'd say, something, probably good, and then I'd be like, "Can we talk about what's going on here?" And they're like, "I don't know you," and the authenticity thing is so like amped that I'd have to tell them, like, can we authentically be authentic with each other? Can we like acknowledge that we're two people that just interacted?
Okay, so
my point is I overworked the muscle.
Yeah, we're opening up a new puppet story where now all I want to do is ask follow-up questions to this thing that you're telling me.
Good.
What were your expectations when you walked up to a person at a water fountain with your heart on your sleeve and just said, like, "See me"? Which is another parallel to your puppets. It's like it always ends in like you just like, "See me," in some weird abnormal way that you approach it. But the goal is to be seen.
Well, I think that...
What was your expectation?
I think there's two problems here. One problem is that actually, if a culture values honesty at all, what I was trying to do wasn't abnormal at all. The problem more so is...
your goal wasn't abnormal.
No. But like the way I approached it, you're right, wasn't how most people approach.
Like, I just want to know, like, how did you see that playing out when you were like, let's talk about what's going on here. Like, in your mind, how did that play out before it actually played out?
Mostly bad. I mean, like, so at that time in my life when I would try to do that, I would normally predict things to go really not well.
So what was the goal of doing it if you didn't think it was going to go well?
I think it was almost like honesty kamikaze honesty.
Okay.
Like,
I like that.
Yeah,
that's a great
strapping hearts to my chest.
Title.
They're also explosive. I'm just fucking putting hearts everywhere. But like,
got it.
Just strapping heart bombs on my chest and like running towards people and being.
It sounds like it was running an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely
like, what happens if I'm 100% honest?
Yes, that was
right
a
off
big
the
part
bat with someone I don't know.
A lot of it was pleading, though, too. A lot of it was really wanting people to meet me there in this place that I kind of like didn't accidentally find myself in, but I tripped into extreme. I tripped into the very other end of the polarized thing, and then I kind of wanted to see if anybody could meet me there, because it's also really lonely when you're just always out rushing dopamine and wanting to be authentic with people, you know. So
this is how far in the past that we're talking right now?
I mean, I'd say it was probably 16.
Okay, and did this lead to the opposite extreme of putting up barriers and, like you said, sort of lying about things?
Oh God, yeah. Well, okay. I mean, so
you think this is what led to the scenario that you said you regret?
I think that. So I've worked on it quite a bit, but those tracings do attach to what I most recently regret. The thing I just told you.
Yeah, and
so
it's
I mean, I overworked the muscle,
yeah,
and then it snapped, and then once it snapped, what was there was a snapped muscle, and basically I just put up walls and was private and went on the other side of being authentic.
Yeah,
and inauthentic.
And another sort of parallel to your puppet story of like, it's once again when you're bringing innocence to a scenario and it's not given back and it breaks.
Yes.
Or like you brought the
almost
puppet
like
to your
puppet
friend.
strings.
Exactly. Like it's like another sort of death of innocence for you, and that's weird that that's the next story you brought up, because it's sort of the same theme as the last one. But yeah, I mean, it's you had no defenses. You got hurt because of that, and then you put up many defenses. So you went from one extreme to the other, and it feels like since then it's been taking them down one by one and seeing if you're going to be okay.
I'm curious, like, what about you? Like, can you describe to me your authenticity, Misaka? And have you gone through a few rebirths of that? Like, have you gone through the periods where you were just really overtly honest and it got you shot in the back, or did you have mostly periods of like the opposite side of that, where it's like I'm not going to kamikaze heart myself?
I guess I've been very upfront about, I'd say, shallow honesty. But I have always had a lot of walls up. I can't even think of like there was ever a time when I had hearts on the sleeve. I don't know when that died. I can't think of that scenario.
Yeah.
But like I've always been very upfront about things. I guess that I was confident about, but not honest about vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Because you want to. I know. I guess I've always just tried to fake it till you make it with myself about like I am strong. I don't need I am this. I am this person.
The lie that works.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, again, lie is bad, is negative connotation or something. But like the in a way, if I don't feel strong and I tell myself I am, and like I have all evidence supports that I'm not strong in the ways that I'm trying to apply my strength, and I tell myself, no, dude, I lift. Oh God, do I lift heavy things?
Yeah.
And I don't.
It's like it's which muscle are you working? Are you the one where you see strength or you see weakness?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I don't. I think I've always been a very upfront and blunt person. In the same way that I'm sort of the metaphor of me is, I've always had to step over every boundary to see it. So I guess my authenticity in Misakas has just been doing that in different contexts.
Yeah.
Of how honest can I be until there's pushback or hurt or fall off or something happens.
Yeah.
And that's where I find the line. And without doing that, I've never been able to see where the line is.
That makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know. My response to that, because this is the thing I got stuck on when you said, basically, so stepping over the boundary to see it. For me, it was always tripping over it, or if it wasn't tripping over it, like it was. I don't know. I spent so much time as a kid being really aware of humor and kind of this like glorious part of stumbling over yourself, and this glorious part of being like classically a comedian or clown or whatever those things are. And so I would almost lead myself into stumble over boundaries in the same way that I describe it as stumbling, in the way that I think that's funny. So like, I don't know, I would would Charlie Chaplin my way into boundaries.
Would you say that you found yourself running, so when you did hit the boundary or the barrier, it hurt more, and I sort of walked towards it step by step, so that when I did hit it, it wasn't as painful, and maybe that didn't make me jump back or trace back so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think
is that fair?
I mean, I think that the thing that's similar the complementary thing between you and I is that I think that I, in my experience, have been more depth and you've been more breadth, and what I mean,
that's for sure.
Yeah, and so I think that like I think you're accurate. I think you're right, but like you incrementally work up, like step by step to the boundary, and then I only dive.
Yeah. Well, I'm also doing it with 3 boundaries at once.
Yes.
So wider.
Yes.
And taking them all step by step.
Yeah.
And you're like, this one.
Yeah.
Boom!
All the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then like doing one and then doing a ton, one after the other,
Yes.
and then you know when you like wake up and you have like bruises on your body just in random places, and you're like, I didn't know that I sleep in a cage fight. Like I didn't know that dreams punch me, but like
So many good possible titles. So
just dreams punching me. Yeah. But it was kind of like that. It wasn't being unaware of myself. It was just like speed and a need for speed and just a desire to do the depth thing, and only doing the depth thing if you can go really far into it. So yeah, I mean, I guess that what I would draw for both the things we're saying is
well, I think that both those strategies
Yeah.
will get you the same amount in the same amount of time.
yes,
Right? You running as fast as you can into 3 and me taking 3 step by step, one at a time.
Yep.
It gives the same result.
again, having depth and breadth I think is overlooked, and it's like, you know, I have
Well, again, balance. You want to find the balance.
exactly,
between both, yeah.
but like weightlifting, right? Like I want to do.
Yeah, you want to work out multiple muscle groups
Yeah,
when you go,
yeah,
rather than just
yeah.
sitting there and just curling for 7 hours.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I think that muscle building can be thought of the same way. I like this. I like that we can do this.
We stopped conversation earlier, and you said, "Can you ask me a question right now?"
Yeah.
What was the motivation for that?
I mean, I think in a very basic sense, having someone ask me a question is just I mean, it makes me talk, and I don't know. I mean, it was twofold. If I'm honest, one was because I knew that if you asked me a question, it'd make structure for a conversation, and it'd keep moving forward. So some of it was podcast related, but in a more personal way, I think it's that the same reason why I ever went to therapy at all. I guess segue. I'm not even meaning to, but okay. Do you remember? Okay, so Fight Club. Aaron Norton's character goes to like all of the self-help groups, all of them. There was a time when I would go like habitually, and I just like try out a bunch of different therapists, and
Very good little hunting of you.
yeah. Yeah, luckily I didn't like give a ton of them a run for their money. Or maybe that would have been a good thing, but I definitely I tried to find the ideal therapist, which is good. But one of the main reasons why I did that was that I liked the format of Q&A, and I know that for me, and I know that what's been more or less talked about and proven in some like scientific communities is that questions elicit responses, questions motivate thought. So I mean, if you ask yourself a question, you're likely to think about something as opposed to just commenting.
Okay, so was it kind of almost sounds like it was looking for an external motivation to think?
Yes, because where I'm at right now in this moment, I kind of need something external to get me to think and talk.
Well, it's almost too how we were just saying before with history is
Yeah.
if you only look at your history and only think about things through the lens that you already have, you're not adding any tools to your tool belt.
Mm-hmm.
So to have it be even have a question framed in a way that you haven't thought about,
Yeah.
even if you've answered that question but not in that same framing,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it simply brings a new frame to it that you didn't have before.
So I think that's the reason. And then also, like, it is a switch for me. I mean, if you were to ask me a question the same way when I would go to therapy and they'd ask me a question, like a lot of the reason why I would go is because it was about conversation and not necessarily about the substance of the conversation. In the same way that going to the doctor was kind of satisfying to me, and that they would be like, they'd be like, "Have you been
Personal attention.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, have you been drinking? How many drinks of water do you have a day?" And I'm like, "I have several drinks of water a day." And then they're like, "Good." And I'm like, "That was nice." Or they're like, "Your big toe seems to be kind of red." And I'm like, "Yeah, I bumped it." And why is this is weirdly interesting to me?
Is there a question that stands out to you that was asked by one of those therapists that surprised you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, questions about questions.
Questions, fucking no surprise. I think the one that stands out, not as being as interesting, but as being one that was helpful, was just pretty simply, what do you really think? Because we were talking about scripts, and you go to a healthcare professional, or you talk to your parents, or you talk to an authoritative figure, or you talk to your principal, and they're like, "Are you doing okay?" And it's to your benefit, usually, to say, "Yeah," or the principal's like, "Did are you willing to do the work?" And you're like, of course I'm willing to do the work, and yes, the script is great." Or the therapist is like, "All right, do you have thoughts of suicide?" And you're like, "No." What? Me? Good? Always.
What popped into my head when you said scripts was the story you told about going up to people at water fountains and just being 100% honest, where sort of the goal was to break the script as quickly as possible.
Yes, and actually that was kind of the biggest reason, was that I know that we act through scripts, and I know we have dialogue trees, and I know that a lot of us, and that I have, behaved like NPCs from Oblivion or Skyrim or whatever, or any random RPG.
Insert video game here.
Yeah, exactly. Insert game with game. And I knew that, and so the authenticity thing was kind of to just be like, open your eyes, man. Like Soylent Green is people. Like just the like the equivalent of that. And so that was a big part of it.
Interesting. So yes, it's like the Wizard of Oz, like pulling the curtain back and seeing what's really behind it.
Yeah. And thinking selfishly a lot of those times that that like I was the person that was doing that for people, or that somehow, like, that it wasn't just like driven by solipsism or whatever, solipsism words, and that thinking that I was seeing something that someone couldn't, and when I would approach them, that they're not aware that they're a guy drinking the water fountain, and they're not aware that of the fact that their responses to people that come up to them are kind of neatly packaged and garnered by
these are my water fountain responses.
And I love the specific water fountain response as an idea. That's great, but that was the thing, which would lead me kind of tangentially, if that's all right, to lead into or just to talk about this idea of like assuming other people's interior lives as being a certain way, and that for a long time, something that I guess potentially misguided by, was a notion that other people didn't have lives as rich as mine. And I see that in a lot of ways that was mostly out of fear, and also because of a pretty real desire to think that I'm the only person that has an experience.
How is that out of fear?
Like in a way, if two things. In a way, if people are having subjective experiences, I am not having theirs, or I'm not seeing theirs, or I'm not the only one having one, and there is some inherent low resolution with some of the ways that I can perceive things, and there's one fear in that. And then also,
it's almost like being alone in your self-awareness.
Yeah, and I mean a bit, and then also the fear that also a same fear that people aren't having internal experiences at all, and I have no real evidence that they're having it because I'm very much in where I'm at. It's such a weird idea to think that the only way that I basically am able to share thoughts with people, and there's a lot of mediums, but the primary way is through wobbling waves of air, and that is the way that I relate my subjective experience to someone else. And it didn't feel like enough, and it felt too much like being in a game, and so in a way I also went there because I wanted to reaffirm the fear that I was alone in that. Because if you're alone in your subjective experience, then at least you know that that you're kind of right in your assumption that what you're seeing is entirely to yours, and that these are just things around you, and that's a bit more reassuring than to know that other people are also having subjective experiences, which on so many different levels could be seen as really selfish. But a lot of it is okay, great example. Imagine you're playing Pokemon, just your Pokemon Red or something, and you randomly encounter another trainer, and he's like, yes, I challenge you to the da-da-da. And then you're like, cool, normal. And then he says, also, I've been thinking about Pokemon lately, and also, what's the deal? And I've been having a subjective experience, and like he starts saying like, and I've been wondering if your text entry is going to be like this too. In a sense, there's something kind of scary in that.
So it's almost like you were trying to break the game,
and also keep it alive
because you wanted to know that it was a game, and that you found comfort in that.
There's a serious comfort in it, and then there's also a serious comfort in placing variables in boxes. And so if I say to you that reality is a game and people aren't having actual interior lives, if I say that and I know that and I experience that, then it's well defined and I can leave it be. In the same way that it's doesn't always feel great to not know things or to feel that you know things. To be in a world of your own while also being really close to people with worlds of their own, if you're in that circumstance at all, there's like a really inherent like cognitive dissonance that happens, where in a way you're wanting to keep the game alive because otherwise you think of yourself as part of the game. You know, if the NPC comes up to you and says, I've been thinking about Pokemon, and also I'm a real character and I can prove it, and here are all of these historical facts, and also I live in your neighborhood, and da-da-da, and I graduated from your high school class, and you're not playing an online version of Pokemon, like the character in the game says that. Something kind of, there begins to be a terror in that it kind of reaffirms that you're an NPC, that your interior life isn't as rich. You know, like
so if all NPCs are having this internal experience, that makes you an NPC because you're also having an internal experience.
Yeah, in a way, right? So it's you want partially believe through solipsism that your solipsistic whatever experience is true and true to yours and your own and the only one having it, so as to not have the fear of being just something that isn't having an actual subjective experience. Like, if every person is having a very real subjective experience, and you're included in that, and in a way that becomes the baseline for being a non-player character, in a way, because that's what everyone's programmed as an NPC to do, the same thing that you're programmed to do. Exactly. On top of the fact that, like, so the inherent relationship between you and non-player characters and video games is that you are consciously a player controlling a character, and you only really have evidence while playing games that non-player characters don't have a player playing them. And if you were to find that those characters, seemingly well enough, were being controlled by other players, the new kind of baseline for your viewing of NPCs and you and them would be, oh, we're all players played by NPCs. I mean, or sorry, we're all characters played by people.
I guess I understand that. I guess the problem I have in that personally is that I've always not seen it as there's a game that we're all playing, but I see it more as everyone's playing their own game.
Yeah.
So like I am my own game and you are a different game, and it's not us as characters in the game.
Yeah.
But we're all playing our own game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
does that change anything? Does that like make it less?
So I mean, this isn't like a leading paranoia or a leading thought that I still have. It's one that sometimes returns.
It was your break the game Misaka.
Yeah. Well, yeah, or my being okay with it being a game or having or not being a game Misaka, and I mean everybody having their own personal game that they're playing makes a lot of sense to me and is really cool.
But
I guess it's the contradiction that there's a contradiction that's necessary for you to prolong being someone in a reality before you try to rip yourself out of it. And that contradiction relies on you both being inside of a game and also being aware that you're inside of a game.
So wouldn't that be the exact frame of being a Misaka researcher?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that you're simulating experience through Misakas. Like I mean, really,
those are kind of just like NPCs you've created for yourself, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So I mean, there's kind of something funny in that too. If that's part of a fear, then you're still making a game based on that. But you're right. I mean, I guess what's cool. I guess what this kind of does lead into is that, at least for me, the main reason why the Misaka thing appeals to me so much is because it captures what has for a long time felt like a necessary relationship I have with reality, where the closest I can get to true empathy or being with someone else or in someone else is to have a mental form that I think of as them, and then I simulate that form as being them. I mean, again, I know that's probably standard for how you relate to somebody is you think about that person and then you think about how you relate to them and stuff, but I kind of have to do the gaming perspective there too. Like, and the difference here being is that my Misakas that I'm thinking about that were formerly the Misakas I used to empathize with people are, again, like we talked about the inner empathy thing, the Misakas I use now to empathize with myself. You know, like...
So you're essentially just saying that you need structure to be a person.
I mean, yeah, there's... I think that's an essential of what I think that is useful to me. But it's sort of like... I think I might smear the air with like weird abstraction if I try to say that isn't true. So I'm just gonna say yeah. that's pretty accurate. Yeah, structure is essential for me at the least of being able to functionally be a person.
Yeah. It's kind of like that you didn't come with that structure already programmed in. You've had to program it in yourself as time's gone on. Mm-hmm. Ask me a question.
Okay.
I like how you frame it as like, could you do me a favor and ask me a question? It's like, ask me a motherfucking question.
Let's see.
He's chewing on his fingers.
Oh, they're like very close to my mouth. And they're getting like they're quickly approaching inside my mouth. Okay.
That's a great title too. Quickly approaching inside my mouth.
We could just do an entire long form poem built on our fucking quotes, a title card poem.
Next episode.
Next episode, yes. It'll be called Title Card Poem. What is a quality, what is your most resilient quality, and what challenges it most now?
Resilient quality. Can you be more specific about what you mean by resilient quality? Like, that's
which quality have you had
persisted?
that has persisted through time and grown over time and flourished over time despite and because of challenge? And what currently challenges it now the most?
Interesting.
I'd be fucking terrible at Twitter. Okay, keep going.
It's not your social media platform, bro. I almost want to say, like, being a little fucker. Okay. In the way that, like, anytime I see a string, I have to pluck it.
Okay. That is a little fucker quality.
Yeah, and it's like,
it's...
and I think it started as an annoying thing about me, but I've been able to turn it into something I think more productive over time, where, like, I used to be that little kid who would, like, I was like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you.
Okay.
Like, I was that kid.
Wait, actually?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just had all this energy and I didn't know what to do with it, and I was like, fucking, and like, with that, like, I needed to cross the line to know where it was. It was kind of an annoying thing because I would have to do that with everyone. But over time, I've started finding more and more lines, and I think I've been able to transform the being a little fucker into more being a devil's advocate.
Okay.
And I think it's led very naturally into that, where, like, I always want to, even for myself, play the other side to improve the thought or the argument or the idea, to make something sort of indefensible. It's a fort that can't be taken down. And it's really naturally played into that. And I think the challenge on it was finding a way to make it not an annoying quality, because it is an innate part of who I am. And the challenge has been finding a way to use it productively in external relationships and in my internal relationship with myself.
What challenges it most now? Like, what makes having that... Is there anything that makes that quality difficult right now?
Yeah. It's...
difficult, I guess, to live through.
Yeah. It's easy to lose yourself in that.
Okay.
When you play the devil's advocate, it's not... I guess in a way it's not your thoughts. So it's easy to lose yourself into, like, always playing that role rather than just being in the conversation or like hearing what someone's saying, or you're always looking for that, like, but where's the hole? Like, where can I pluck? Where can I be a little fucker? Like, that part of it is still there. Like, it's still that quality. So it's easy to sort of lose yourself in that identity of, in the devil's advocate, Misaka. It's one that I think has lived a lot of life cycles, and it's ended up as the devil's advocate, Misaka. But it's now I need to see how much I can play that one out before it crosses the line, and I need to figure out what the reiteration of it is and when that needs to die and it needs to become something else. It's once you start playing that role like a game, it's hard to stop playing that game, and also not everyone wants to play that game.
Being a lifelong 4chaner, it can be...
I'm the analog 4chan, yes.
I really relate to that, and two, I get the challenge and the idea of I'm trying to accomplish something, but the way that I accomplish it is by I move laterally one step to the right to do that. Not necessarily not being direct, but like if you're taking the role of devil's advocate, even if you don't relate to that position, but it's helpful to take that position. It's interesting because you're like there's some puzzle analogy here. I've almost bottomed out on analogies, but like you're moving another piece ahead to move a piece that's right there before you, and that can be challenging in itself in terms of, well, there's like an inner confusion that I land on that's similar to it, and the best way that I could relate to it is saying that for a really long time, and still to this day sometimes, I'm taking part in impressions, and I like doing impressions to do something else. Like, I'll assume the role of a particular character in a conversation with somebody so as to test the part of myself that doesn't relate to that.
So what I'm thinking about now is this Misaka. So for me, we'll call it the devil's advocate Misaka.
Yeah.
Yours is the impressions Misaka.
Yeah.
It allows us to more gently find the line without having to step over it. Because if I can simulate the other person, or if I can step out and sort of try to poke holes in my own argument, it shows me where that line is that I have to cross.
Yeah.
And I won't have to just sort of bound over it and
Right.
be like, oh fuck, there it was.
Yeah.
I can sort of poke it for a little while and be like, oh, I think that might be the line, and take a gentler step, or even just see where it is without having to actually take the step over
Right.
it. And that's, I guess that's what that Misaka's purpose has become, because it's almost just like a more elegant way of doing it. Where when I was younger, I would just poke and pluck until I found the line, and it wasn't a very productive way for me to get there, and it wasn't very enjoyable for others. But this way it's a more nuanced way of doing the same thing, and it's a way that allows me to do it more internally, so it's not as little fuckery. Where I can it helps me find the line by playing the other roles, so I don't have to actually play it out in real life as much.
Do you want to hear a kind of a dark way to describe this? At least in my reflection.
Please.
Imagine if you could sit in a chair, plug yourself into something, and that something controls a little tiny mind controlling thing, like a spore, and it embeds its head in someone that you're nothing alike, but you want to have the experience of being that person. So let's say you find there's like a guy who, I don't know why this was the thing that came to mind, but like beats chickens. I realize that sounds like it could be an innuendo.
Yeah. I mean, we can just go with fucks goats.
Yeah.
Because that's less
guy
offensive.
Fucks goats.
Yeah.
But anyways, you become the spore, you get in someone's mind, and then you're right. You control their body, living through them subjectively and stuff. And you see how far you can run with them and do their tasks and stuff, and you have all of that, their experience, and then you, I don't know, jump off a cliff. And then you wake up and you're back in your body. In a pretty real way, taking form of through other personality and through devil's advocation and I guess doing the impression thing feels really similar to me. I mean that feels very similar to me to the thing I just described, where you're testing where does that version of whoever that is that could or couldn't be me die? Where does that version of someone that is or isn't me right or wrong? When do they ask a question that actually challenges me? When do they say something that's right? When do they say something that's profound or funny? There's usefulness in that Misaka. For me, it has been for a long time, because like how you're kind of, the idea you're establishing is that you learn boundaries for yourself and through others by being something other than yourself. So in a kind of a real way, it's like the secret spy socializing. I'm just looking for title cards, but secret spy socializing. You become a spy. You spy around. You gain data about whatever evil corporation you're sneaking up on. It's a James Bond themed analogy, and you do that, and you go about it that way and stuff, and you learn like a decent amount undercover, pretending to be someone else. And so I like this idea, this kind of the subversion of saying, hey, not being yourself sometimes can be of benefit, or you've adjusted to that over time. You grew a Misaka, just period, that gave you benefit from being someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And there is truth in that too for me when I was younger, and I would, in a real way, try to obviously fit into a different social group and would pretend to be someone else. And I'd get a lot of benefit out of that. Mostly, like, here are things I don't like or relate to. Or, oh, this is, like, I'm playing Empire Earth, and my map has become, it's becoming more visible to me. So I'm seeing more of the things that I don't want by also, I guess, essentially not being myself. Not to say that not being yourself is, like, a great way to go, but at least it gives some interesting perspective on, I don't know, how we've dealt with our lives.
Yeah, I mean, and there's always going to be value in another perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, like, by that sort of reference of, like, playing the spy or playing the other character,
Mm-hmm.
playing someone else, the challenge of, like, the more characters you play, the harder it is to distinguish which one is yourself.
Yes, yeah.
And that's why sort of, like, the getting lost in that is easy.
Yeah.
It's finding the balance of, like, when to do it and, like, when it's the most beneficial.
But also, what a cool way to find yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
sure.
like it could be, right? But I mean, what a cool way to find yourself by testing every available personality and way of thinking that you can.
Yeah. Well, that's what exactly what it is. It's an experiment. Like, you have, I want to test A, B, and C, and cool, B worked the best in that. Now I'm going to take B and test it against D, E, F. Cool, F works the best in that.
Yeah.
So it's like this constant expansion and what's the opposite of expansion? Retraction? Expansion and retraction of, like, this character taught me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to test it against these three. I want to make 3 more characters and see which one gives me the most in this argument. And that's like, oh, okay, that one worked the best. I'm going to take that piece. Yeah, so it's creating sort of your own agnostic framework within yourself almost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Getting a little bit tired.
And on that bombshell, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Heavy humid night, corner of Park and Main. Cast that first glance, your smile my veins at maximum capacity, blood pumping so fast, my girl. If looks gave heart attacks, dangerous men in the shadows were like an audience, and even the meanest among them had a special little shine in their eyes.